Hey, hey, hey. Happy Tuesday. It's been a minute, right? Um, it's been a lot going on. Welcome to Momo Love Presents Many Voices of the Community. It is an extension of my weekly radio internet show called Community Voices with Momo Love alongside DJ Firebone. You can hear it Wednesdays from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Ablazing Radio by downloading the app or logging on www.ablazingradio.com. The show is where like-minded people come together to share common goals and interests, and we have a bevy of people on, and we have a great time discussing things that involve us in the community about our health, our wellness, our finances, and sometimes we just have a great old time. So make sure you tune in for that. So since the onset of the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, we've been having our minds blown with numbers and tests and masks and, all these types of things, and just trying to figure out, where to go, what to do, how to get around. And I started in May, and it was also on the cusp of mental health awareness. And I just wanted to figure out a way that I could reach out to my friends and family and members of the community on how they were coping through quarantine talks or, coping with Corona through quarantine talks. So it was going very well. I know I was blessed from every single conversation, and I hope the guests were, and I also hope that whoever listened at the time was just as blessed. Now with the aftermath of the murder of our brother George Floyd, whose homegoing service was held today in Houston, Texas, that along with just so many things that's going on, and coronavirus is still out here, COVID's still real, and we just move around like nothing is going on. But I just wanted to talk to people in the community about what was happening. But now, there's so much focus on racial inequality, racism, and things of that nature. But I always, I'm always like looking at something this way, right? And but it's the center of what's happening, which is the black man. And we're yelling and screaming, and some of us may be having these conversations, but I definitely wanted to not only have the conversation, but I wanted to hear the voice of the community, of the black man, because that is a community. The black man is a community. And tonight I want to go get right on into it. I'm going to be honest, I don't know a lot about my next guest, except for the fact that he is a community leader. He is an activist in his own right. I do know that he's a saxophone husband. He's a father, and he is a friend to the community. I want to welcome, and we're going to get more into who he is, Mr. Todd Ledbetter. Hello, sir.
Miss Mo, how are you?
How are you?
Well, I didn't expect to look like this. I thought I was going to make it to the barbershop today, but my schedule got backed up. So,
Well,
yeah, I
that's
am
okay.
looking like
I
Ned
think this is your
Wine.
natural you. That's your natural you, so that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And hey, by the way, I've been doing social media all the way back to like MySpace days, but this is my first IG live. So, Miss Mo, you are my first.
I love that. I love it. So I don't know if you heard my whole spiel on, why I created this. First of all, I host a weekly radio show on an internet station called Community Voices, and it's where like-minded people come together to share common goals and interests. And on the onset of coronavirus, I was like, is anybody just as crazy as me? And I reached out, who can I talk to? And we had some great insight. Then the death of Brother George Floyd brought an additional mind-blowing series of events.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what's going on with my black men, my black brothers? Like,
Yeah.
we're marching, we're screaming, we're angry, we're fed up, but what are we really, what's really going on? It's still a mental, physical check-in to say, Todd Ledbetter, how you doing?
I really appreciate that. And we need to check on each other, but especially for the men in your life, and especially brother to brother, we need to check in on each other. I've been checking in on some friends and family members just to see how they were doing. One of the things is, as men in general, we tend not to deal with our emotional sides as much. And it's not that we don't have them. It's just that, we tend not to dwell out of that space in our brains. And I think because of a lot of the very traumatic things that have happened to us as Black men here in America, there's a lot going on that we don't really talk about. When you talk about things like drug use, crime, antisocial self-destructive behavior, how we treat our women, all of that can be traced back to the trauma that we have suffered in the 400 years that we've been here, not just ourselves personally, but that genetic trauma that's been transferred down through generations.
Yeah, and so even if whether you believe Willie Lynch is real, right? That whole concept of how you enslave a man and keep a man in control by, alienating the lighter from the darker, the women, the old and the young, things of that nature. Even if you don't believe the Willie Lynch letter itself, the result, I believe, is real, as you've just laid out all of the things that we suffer, and we look at one another two and four and trying to figure out how do we get through it. When you look at the years, over 400 years of enslavement, but really only 56 years of what we call freedom.
Yeah.
How are we dealing with that? And definitely in light of the recent and past events, current events
Yeah.
actually, of what's been going on and how Black men are treated daily, and they cannot even speak out.
Yeah.
um
You know,
when did you
I
first when did you first know you were Black?
when did I first know I was Black? I think the first time I looked in the mirror.
No, but what I mean is when it became an issue.
It's really hard for me to know, to remember, because I'm what I call OG Gen X. So I'm one of those ones born in the late 60s. So I actually can remember a little tiny bit of the 60s. And of course the 70s with the Black Power and everybody wearing
Yeah,
afros and everything.
yeah.
So my earliest memories were the time where Black people in America were really beginning to love themselves. So those are some of my early memories. And
Hmm.
and so I think growing up at that time, it didn't seem like such a bad thing to be Black. But
Yeah.
then I went to, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I went to a school system that was at the time predominantly white, and I dealt with my share of racism, being called nigger, all kinds of other things happening. And some of the same people, friends that I have to this day, friends of mine on Facebook, and a lot of them are cool, a lot of them get what's happening, but some of them just will not, hardcore, Trump supporters. And
Mm.
we have some interesting conversations. Usually it's respectful because, whatever, I try to leave people in love. Even when I hit you between the eyes, I'm going to try to leave you in love.
I mean,
But
that's that's the rule.
but real talk, Mo, it got to the point with a few of them that I just had to disengage because I was like, okay, I'm spending all this time trying to talk to you, and no amount of factual evidence, no amount of rational um, discourse, no amount of even appeal to a sense of compassion is changing your mind. We're talking about 400 years of systemic racism, and you want to talk about Antifa. So I got to the point where I was just like, you know what? You can think whatever you want to think. That is your right. That is your business. I love you. But enjoy your walk on the wrong side of history.
Yeah.
And while you're over there, tell Robert E. Lee I said, what's up?
Now I want to get pause right there for a second because I really don't have any white friends.
Okay.
I don't have any white associates.
Okay.
I don't have any.
You should
I
try
don't
it.
think so.
But seriously,
No, I know that they're good people. I know that there are some good people. It's just in my lifetime
yeah,
and where I've gone and how the road has led me just has not really led me to have someone that could get that close to me.
right. Well, one of the things that attracted me to, I live in the DMV now, and I moved here in the early 90s, not long after I graduated from college. And,
Okay.
it was still, now, I don't know are you in DMV or are you somewhere else?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so
I'm in the
when I
DV.
got down here in the early 90s, it was still very much Chocolate City. The go-go culture was at its peak. And I got in and I would just got in the flow and I loved it. And sometimes there were weeks that would go by that I would not have any meaningful interaction with a non-Black person. And I loved it. And, it was cool. But I got in a conversation with one of my with actually friends of my son, who also grew up in this area, but now lives out in Washington State with his mother. And he did a Zoom call with some friends of his, just talking about everything that's happening. And all the kids from the DMV were talking about, some of them were in schools and college. Some of them went places like Ohio and Michigan to college, and they were just shocked. And I said, you know what? Every person who grows up, every Black person who grows up in the DMV needs to spend a little bit of time outside of the DMV, because most of the rest of the country is nothing like this. And
Sure.
number one, you got to demythologize. I think, when you grow up in this area with so many Black people and you're so just in a predominantly Black environment, you talk about white people like almost like they're mythological creatures or something, and they're really not.
Okay.
You got to demythologize them. See, they're just people. They may think a little differently. They may look a little differently in some cases, but their breast thinks no more than just like you do, so it ain't that big of a deal.
Right. And so here's the thing, it makes, and I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. It's like we have to understand them.
And we do. I mean, as a matter of survival historically, we have had to know them better than they know themselves. And I think that's still the case. But as an individual, when you grow up in an environment where you don't really see them firsthand, you start. One of the things that I've noticed that people talk about a lot of times here in this area is they. When I
Well, they is everywhere. They is in Ohio. They is in Florida.
No,
They is everywhere.
I'm talking about here, Mo. When they talk about they, and especially when I actually lived in DC for 11 years, and this was at the time, remember, the 90s, when things were starting to slowly turn around in DC. When I moved to Northwest Washington, about around the corner from Cardozo High School, where I lived for 11 years, the neighborhood was very much just beginning to transition. And every time I talk to someone, I heard about they. Well, they want us, they want this, they want that. And I'm like, well, you know
Well,
what?
DC is a very political town,
I
so
know.
that's who the they is. But let me ask you, Todd. Let me
All right.
ask you.
I didn't mean to go on a tangent. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm gonna get you right on back.
All right.
Did your parents have the talk with you?
Yeah, they did. And I'm trying to remember when it started. A lot of the stuff that I learned happened after I got out of school,
High school or
out of
college?
high school. When I went to
Okay.
college, I realized just how much anger I had within me. And I did go to a PWI. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, but there was a very strong uh, history of kind of Black activism at Pitt.
Okay.
There was a group of Black students took over the university's computer center in the late 60s and made a bunch of demands that put a whole lot of things in place, like Black Studies program and a whole bunch of other things. So Pitt was actually a pretty good environment for me, and there were some Black faculty and administrators that took an interest in me and took me under their wings, which made a huge difference. Um, But I was taking these classes and I'm having these conversations with white people about the same things that we talk about now. And they're sharing their points of view. And some of them were just really kind of, not helpful. And since I've always been pretty good with words, I would go at them. And I just kind of realizing just how much anger I had in me. And I wasn't one
But
to.
where do you think that came from, the anger? I mean, because was it the fact that now that you're at Pitt, they're opening your eyes to things that may have happened to you and you didn't realize that it was racism? You thought it was just normal?
No, I knew what it was up front. If someone calls you a nigga, you kind of know what that
But
is.
yeah, yeah.
You don't
But I
have
mean,
to.
there's a lot of overt or covert racism that we
And,
we may not be
yeah,
aware of.
and tons of microaggressions in
Yeah,
workplaces and everywhere you go in school.
yeah,
If you're halfway intelligent, they say, "Oh, you're
yeah.
one of the good ones," and you're not like little things that they do,
All of
and
that.
little things that happen, I should say.
Yeah.
And so, I to answer your question, I don't really know. I can't really pin it down to one moment where I woke up and one morning and I said, "Hey, I'm black." I just kind
Right.
of has always been, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah. So school afforded you the opportunity to open up your mind, get a chance to know different people. But and it also helped, I'm sure, shaped who you were going to become
Yeah.
as an adult, as a leader in your community. How did you view yourself? How did you think that you were going to be succeeding in this world, primarily as a black man, but then as a man?
Yeah. Well, in general, another thing that happened in school was, I'm a musician. I play saxophone. Been playing
Okay.
since I was 10 years old. And while I was in school, I was in the jazz ensemble, which was led by like a pioneer in jazz studies, late Dr. Nathan Davis. And we made some trips to Jamaica with the band. And that was
Okay.
the first time I had been outside of the country. And, I go and I see all these beautiful black people everywhere owning businesses, the whole Jamaican reggae culture and everything. And that was a kind of a transitional experience for me in my life. And I started really seeing some things very differently, started having a stronger sense of pride, which I always kind of have, but it kind of went to another level after making some of those trips. And in
That's
terms of
nice.
being a black man, I was blessed to actually have my father in the home with me. And he was a successful entrepreneur. He was one of the most successful black building contractors in the city of Pittsburgh in the 1970s. And he was also older, so he was actually a World War II vet. So I got to kind of experience the world from that point of view. So, and I had a lot of strong black men in my family and in the church. So I was always blessed to have some pretty strong role models around.
I'm glad about that because I was going to ask, it goes into manhood versus masculinity.
Yeah,
Once you start,
yeah,
figuring who you are, there is a difference, right? Talk to
absolutely.
me about the
Being a
difference.
man is just is just anatomy. I mean, excuse me, being male is just anatomy. Being a man is what's here and what's here. You know, if you have the heart of a man, um, you're going to always try to do things on with your mind first, because the mind is really the most powerful weapon that you have.
And so that's the thing, trying to navigate through manhood and masculinity. I
Yeah,
mean, I would think, right? I
yeah.
don't know,
And,
but
and, they're, and they're related. There's an overlap, but at some point, sometimes you have to make a decision. Because we all have to do things. We can't all just do everything that comes to our mind to do. If someone's driving down the street and cuts you off in traffic, hopefully you have enough self-control not to try to run after them and run them off the road.
Mhm.
Hopefully if someone like, I don't know, does something to you in the street, hopefully you have enough self-control, self-respect, realizing actions and outcomes and those kinds of things, that you're not just going to get into a physical confrontation with them over something minor if you're an adult. And,
Yeah.
and you just have to keep your humanity, because we are the mothers and fathers of all humanity. and we have to act from that basis.
Hmm. Now, you talked about having a male presence in your life, your father, and you were blessed to have others. Do you think that that contributes to shaping and viewing how the young man sees himself? And secondarily, because it is known that Black men sometimes can suffer in silence. How do you get that bond? How do you build that? How did you build it, and how do you build it with your son? I heard you mention.
Actually, I have three sons.
Okay.
One is in his 20s in college. One is a graduating senior on his way to college on a football scholarship. And one is going into high school. And they are all doing well. And, I think the biggest thing that I tried to do as a father, and fortunately, their mother and I were on the same page with this. We tried to give them some structure and guidelines, but then we also tried to give them enough space to be who they were. They're three very different people. And,
Yeah.
number one, if we saw they were interested in something, we jumped on it and tried to encourage it. My oldest son was very into basketball, so he went to basketball camps and things. My middle son does all kinds of stuff. And matter of fact, this shirt that I'm wearing
That's the
is
shirt for
backwards.
basketball.
So it's
Oh,
no ignorance.
no
It's
ignorance.
backwards, I'm sorry. But yeah, this is his
Okay.
shirt. This is his shirt, his design. He sells them. And I'll put a link.
What's the concept behind that?
Well, it speaks for this is kind of who he is. No ignorance. He does
Okay.
not like ignorance on any level. And however you define it, generally he doesn't want it
Well,
around.
sometimes ignorance is not knowing. So,
Well, I
you
don't mean
know,
ignorance as in, not knowing something, not
okay.
having been exposed. I think we're talking more about the kind of ignorance where you know better and you just choose.
Common sense
And,
ignorance.
and you just choose not to take the higher road, that kind of.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, he does that, and he's also a very good football player. And the youngest one is into weather and flying. He's on flight simulators. We get on a plane and go somewhere. He goes in the cockpit and tells the pilot every control on the plane. He knows all that stuff. And they all play music. We encourage them to play instruments, so they all play instruments. So,
We talk about the Black family being a unit, as a whole, as a nation.
yeah.
But to me, and how it sounds like it's in your household, is that it starts with your household. You have to, the very same way that you want to see yourself successfully somewhere, you have to put the work in. You have to build. You have to talk. You have to, encourage. You have to motivate. And, it really doesn't cost a lot of money. However, we do know that there are so many disparities when it comes to the Black family, the single Black woman, the single Black male. We don't have adequate health care. We don't have adequate housing. We don't have adequate educational services, schools, and the list goes on. So, speak to those brothers who are trying their hardest to do for their children and they just can't, because see, my thing for this is, I definitely can't make my brothers, but I know that my brothers are hurting. I know that my brothers don't know how to talk, and we as women talk too much. So how do brothers band together and or just share with their families what they're going through? I
Well,
asked a lot of them.
I'll share some of my own personal story. In
Okay.
2005, I was diagnosed with bipolar depression, and it was a real journey. It still is. It has taken a toll on me personally, my family. There have been as much great stuff as we have happening. There are definitely some effects of that. I believe that there is an epidemic of undiagnosed depression among Black men. But
So,
over the last, I'd say, year or two, but particularly over the last year, I've been in a space where I've done a lot of just self work. my car broke down about a year ago, and that was inconvenient, as you might imagine. It was a major repair, one that I did not have enough money to get fixed. So I just started walking it. Fortunately, I live in a place where, you know, the store and the library and the post office and everything, but almost everything I need is within about a mile and a half radius of my house. So I start walking, and as I'm walking, I'm meditating, I'm looking, I'm just being appreciative of the outdoors and the things that I see, and I'm listening. You know, I love Audible. So I'm listening to books. They're not just, you know, fiction. I don't really listen to fiction, things that are going to be self-improving and a lot of different concepts. But the biggest thing that I learned over this time and in this season is one of the sources of my depression was the fact that I had a tendency to define myself by my failures. If I, you know, there were some job losses along the way, I felt like a failure because like I'm in positions where I couldn't provide for my family. I feel like a failure. That's how I began to define myself. But once I realized that a man is not defined by the number of times he falls, he's defined by the number of times he gets up.
Yes.
And once I really got that in my heart and soul, I started looking at things differently. Even when the situation doesn't change right away, you begin to change in the situation, and thereby you will begin to impact the situation and show up in a different kind of way.
Yeah. Brother Todd, I thank you for sharing that. I mean, my throat is hurting because, you know, I'm a baby. I cry at everything, and not because I'm sad, but because you were willing to share that, because that's a very heavy thing. And, you know, we talk about depression and mental health awareness all the time, but we never associate it with men. You know, you know, men, it's such a shame because you guys got to always man up.
You know what? I love the fact that you said man up, because you want to know what my definition of man up is? Be man enough to ask for some help when you need it.
I'm going to get a clap machine, but here you go. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. When did it shift somewhere where you had to say, all right, now, Todd, or whatever you call yourself, when you own yourself, you need to ask for help?
Yeah, well, you know, the depression really showed up not long after I got married. My wife was pregnant and she lost the baby in miscarriage. And I took it very hard. I had no children at the time. So, you know, she had a son that she brought into the marriage that I was raising as my own. And we had a great relationship and I loved him and everything. This was the first pregnancy that I was involved with. And after that happened, everything started kind of falling apart. So I sought out some help and the first therapist I went to was a Black man. But it was very bad. He just kind of blamed me for everything that was happening. So he just kind of made things worse. And that became a journey. And, you know, so at that point I reached out for help. But then it was an ongoing reaching out for help. But ultimately I realized, hey, I'm asking these. And at one point I was on medication for years. And the medication kind of dulled down the emotional responses a little bit. But finally I realized, hey, I'm expecting the mental health system to do something that it's really not equipped to do. And I'm only telling my own story. I'm not in any way trying to discourage anyone from not taking medication. If you're prescribed medication, take it. If you're in therapy, go. But for me, there was something else that I had to do to really bring about the kind of changes that I had been seeking out.
You had to put the work in.
I had to put the work in. And still a work in progress.
Yeah. Because that's a difficult thing. I mean, when you're just feeling low, you know, and you feel like the walls are closing in on you, you feel like one thing happens over the
Yeah,
next, and
yeah,
it just doesn't seem like it'll ever change. But I love the fact that you do say, "Hey, we got to stop and say, I need some help. I
yeah,
need some help. I need somebody to tell me, show me, point me in the right direction, or just listen.
yeah.
Just listen." Um, Gosh, how do we unify? How are we gonna? What are we gonna do? You know, there have been so many people and organizations supporting Black Lives Matter and giving money and banding together and taking photo ops and but when it's really time to get down to it, because you know, oftentimes there's only a 10-day news cycle of anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but you know, what do we do? How do we make sure that these folk do what they said they're gonna do?
Well, one thing that really encourages me is what the young generation, they have taken up the mantle. I feel a little ashamed in a way because I feel like in some ways our generation kind of dropped the ball. I think because we were the first post-civil
I'm
rights
sorry.
generation, there was a
Mm,
feeling in a lot of respects that, okay,
that we arrived.
we've arrived. Hey, good times is on TV. Hey, we done made it. But, you know, as I had to explain to one of those people on Facebook that, you know, share other views, I said, okay, the founding fathers could have fixed this up front. They argued, they debated the issue of slavery. They decided they did not have the moral courage or character or integrity to abolish slavery up front. Less than a century
But of
later,
course not.
yeah, well, you know, and then because most of the signers of the Declaration and the Constitution were slave owners. Then, less than a century later, the country's torn apart in the Civil War. Then, 100 years after that, country's divided in the Civil Rights Movement. Here we are about 60 years later, and we're still torn apart over the same issue. I think it really depends on us looking at us. You know, I say it like this. If someone breaks into your house and ransacks it, and, you know, you come home or whatever, and you see your stuff all over the place, you are not going to stand in the middle of your trash living room, fold your arms, and wait for the people who made the mess to come back and clean it up.
Yeah.
And that might not be fair. It might not be right. It might not be your fault. But guess what? It's your house. It's your responsibility to clean it up.
I hear what you're saying, but you know, we're as much as we like to think we're not a sovereign people here in this United States of America. And so, you know, the time has to come where we're either going to hold the people accountable who, although we live in this land, that's not for us. We pay taxes, we have a right, we own homes, we own businesses, we give back to, we go to churches, we give back to the community, we do all of these things that says what a sovereign citizen should be. And we are United States citizens. We are able to vote for whatever reason if we hold, and I don't want to say the kind of card that you or status that you have to be here to vote. Do it. But my thing is that we can no longer allow these politicians to kiss our babies and shake our hands and throw us some chitlins after we've roasted the pork for them, and we have to figure out how to make this poop taste good.
You eat chitlins, Mo?
I'm sorry.
You eat chitlins?
When I found out what they were, they would no.
Uh,
But I'm not gonna lie. You know, they're only in the month of October. I'll have like a
just one little wrinkle.
because my mama make them good, but I just ooh.
Mm, mm. Yeah, but you know, you raised a good point. Here's the thing for me, and I told you about my trip to the Caribbean and when I was in college,
Yeah.
a little over 20
Have you
years
been back?
ago. Yeah, I've been a number of times. Actually, my wife is half Jamaican, so I've been back a few times. But in about 20, almost 22 years ago now, I had a chance to go to Africa. And, that
Right.
just took everything to yet another level.
Which
And I
part?
think Ghana, I went to Ghana, and it
That's
was
cool.
beautiful, lovely. People were just wonderful, everything, just fantastic. And, I think that one of my things, just in life in general, but particularly on this issue, is not either or, but both and. The reality of the situation is we built this country. This country exists because of the uncompensated sweat, toil, work, and suffering of our ancestors. So that makes us stakeholders. That makes us like heirs. But at the same token, I do plan to have a home somewhere in Africa, somewhere, maybe a lot of places, who knows. So, I'll just go back and forth, spend some time in Africa, spend some time here, do some business here, do some business in Africa. The Wakanda thing is real.
But Brother Todd, at the same time, we have to still figure out how to coexist here with each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, I mean, there is going to come a time where I think there's going to come a time where you have to make a decision. I think there's going to have to come a time where you make a decision if you will continue to roll over and allow to be led, or if you will lead. And we as Black people, a lot of times I don't think that we can agree on unity or unification. Is that a word? I just made
Yeah,
it up.
it is.
Talk colorism. you
Yeah.
know we we deal with colorism. We deal with not the fact you've been to Ghana, I've been to Ghana. I talk about going to Africa and wanting to go back to Africa, and there's so many of my Black friends are like, I ain't gonna know Africa.
I
And
ain't
I'm like,
left nothing in Africa.
are you crazy? I'm
Yeah.
like, but at the same time, I feel like, well, if you and in no disrespect, if you've been to Jamaica, you can go to Africa because they truly look and feel the same.
Hey, one of the young men I met in Ghana was I said he said he went to the Caribbean. I said, what is it like? He said, it's just like being here. Yeah. But I think that, we've got so much uh overcoming that emotional baggage. And I think that the biggest manifestation of the enslavement experience on us as a people is it has stripped so many of us of the fundamental instinct to act in our own best interest. We get a few dollars together. What do? We don't start a business. Well, not all the time. A lot of people do, but in a lot of cases, more cases than I think there should be, we get a few nickels to rub together. We're not investing. We're not starting businesses. We're not doing things that are going to get us ahead. We're running out to figure out what we can buy with it. If I was
Brother
the
Todd,
check, if I was,
in all fairness,
yeah.
we've only been free 56 years. We don't know too much outside of getting our Sunday best.
But check
We
this
don't know
out.
too much.
But what about Black Wall Street in Tulsa? That was 100 years
Well,
ago.
people are just realizing that. I mean, that was only uh, that was 1921. So
Yeah,
do the
that
math.
was 100 years ago. Yeah.
So I'm only half of that. So I only found out about Tulsa maybe 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're still catching up on, you know, what greatness we had. We hear we come from kings, and oh, what they're talking about. We don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And now, because there has been such an overwhelming openness of kill the Black man, decimate the Black family, divide the Black women, confuse the Black children, and now we have what we want, which is genocide before our eyes. It's like a culmination of trying to continue to keep a people down, and it's like now people are really trying to understand
Yeah.
what the hell is going on here.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head. The real battleground is right here. What did Bob Marley say? Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. So if we get to the point where, as Black women, we don't feel like, I say this, and you're probably not going to like this, but as I have had to tell some young women on more than one occasion, when you leave with your ass, don't be surprised if that's how you get treated. And I
I
know
can
that's
definitely
not popular to say, and we
under.
got work to do, and but we got to do it.
No, being the age that I am, I can understand what you mean when you say that. I definitely agree. And we could, not to turn anything into a vice versa, but I can agree with that. I love our conversation. You have shared with us about the mental health awareness that our brothers go through, and it leads me into self-care. How do brothers, and mainly you, Brother Todd, how do you maintain your self-care? I mean, because the struggle is very real. You guys may or may not have a lot of people to talk to. Somebody may not be a therapist, that may not be their goal, or to go to their pastor, or, whatever the case. And we really do expect men to man up. Like I said, you can't, even as a child, baby boys can't cry, but I want to know, what kind of self-care do you maintain to keep yourself centered?
Yeah, well, I get up every morning and I practice appreciation and gratitude.
Mm.
Starting with that, I just spend a few minutes just appreciation and gratitude. And then I do meditate. I meditate for about 20 minutes a day. Then I do some exercise and I start my day. And like I said, all this walking I've been doing has been so therapeutic for me, and having the time and the space to just kind of really get my head on a little bit straighter. And I think one of the big things that you can do is turn the TV off, or if you're going to have TV on, spend a little bit of time watching something uplifting. History, I'm kind of a nerd. I love History Channel. I watched a thing that's on History Channel now about Ulysses S. Grant. I know who he was. I didn't know a whole lot about him. And I found it very inspiring, because this was a guy who failed at everything he ever did until he realized that his strength was leading men into battle and killing slaveholders, which is not a bad thing.
Okay. I
but
might look up Ulysses Grant since he
yeah,
did that.
yeah. But and by the way, he was really for a white man at that time, he really had a commitment to trying to make America a little fairer for all these newly freed Africans. He actually married. His wife was part of a slaveholding family. He set at least one of her slaves free, and he toward the end of his life, he lost all his money. He's been a victorious general. He's been a two-term president, and he lost all of his money in a bad stock deal.
Oh.
Not only that, he had terminal throat cancer. And, back then, this was like the 1880s. There's nothing they could do
You
for
don't
him.
die.
So he was on his way out of here. But he wrote his memoirs, and he was helped by Mark Twain. And he literally passed away 3 days after he finished his memoirs. But it made all this money and restored his family's fortune. But anyway, I say all that to say,
Uh-huh.
just turn the TV off. Get away from social media. I had to do that. Like I told you, all these back and forth I did on Facebook. I just said, you know what? I just need to get off Facebook for a minute, because I'm doing a lot of things. I'm building a business right now. I got a lot of other things I need to do, and I don't need to
So
be
we got to stay
occupying my
focused.
mental
We got to stay
energy
focused.
with that. So be selective about what you give your mental energy to, and be
Mm-hmm.
selective about the
I
people
like
that
that.
you have in your space. If you
Mm-hmm.
find that every time you have a conversation with someone and they just want to harp on what's wrong with you or what's wrong with what you do, you probably need to politely escort that person to the door of your consciousness.
I like that. I like that. Okay, normally my talks are just about 30 minutes, mister, and we have gone well over that, but I have to get these last three questions out if you
Okay.
don't mind. If
Sure.
you don't mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, June 21st is Father's Day, and we always celebrate our mamas.
Yeah.
But I just want to love on my brothers this month a lot more than normal.
Yeah.
What kind of Father's Day tips, gifts should we think about?
Oh man, that's a good question. I hadn't even thought about it because, well, first of all, my middle son, he's actually his birthday is actually the 19th, Juneteenth.
Okay.
So his birthday always comes right around Father's Day,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that I think the greatest thing that you can give your father is love and respect and appreciation. Just let them know that you appreciate them. And if that comes in the form of a physical gift, that's fine. But generally, we're just like we want to feel like, because most men who have families are really just doing everything they can to try to support their families. And no one's perfect. But if you
Yeah.
just even just say, Dad, I love you, and find one specific thing that you can tell them that they did for you, that you love about them, and that you are thankful for them for. I think that's probably about as good as anything.
Yeah. And how can women be more supportive or, show more support um, through friendship, through relationships?
Um, that's really kind of a loaded question because on the one hand, um, Black women have really kind of held our communities up for so long, and you've done things because we couldn't for one reason or another. Um, just continue to stand with us, uh, celebrate the good, and don't just always harp on the things that may need some improvement. Because guess what? Every time you point one finger out, there's three pointing back. You got stuff you need to work on too.
Yeah.
And I think we need to recapture a sense of self-love. Jesus even talked about this in the Bible. The person asked him, "What's the great commandment?" He said, "Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength." Then he said, "Love your neighbor as yourself." So he set up this conditional relationship that you can't even fulfill that commandment unless you love yourself first.
Mm. Wow. Whew. Well, Brother Todd, coronavirus is still out there.
Yeah, wear your
And
mask.
I was going to say, I hope that you're doing everything that you can to
Oh,
stay safe.
I am.
All right, because now they said that folks been out there protesting, and now they you can come on back to work. Well, I know that there's some limitations.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to say, for anybody who wanted to go and get a test, most fire departments in fire stations in Washington D.C. and there are free testing sites if you go to marylandhealth.gov or DC or Virginia, wherever you guys may be looking, go. Maybe your city, town has some free testing. So I urge you to do that, whether you've been, protesting or not. I just wanted to, in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder, and just reach out to some brothers out there. Be like, what's going on with y'all? How y'all doing? And Mr. Todd Ledbetter, I appreciate you. For those of you who are just joining or saying, who are y'all? My name is Momo Love, and I host a weekly radio talk show, internet based on Ablazing Radio. It's called Community Voices, where like-minded people come together to share common goals and interests. We air every Wednesday from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Ablazing Radio. You can either download the free Ablazing Radio Live app or listen on the web, www.ablazingradio.com. It is a Caribbean station. We play all kinds of music, and we just enjoy ourselves. We talk to different people in the community. We talk about things that matter to us as a people, whether it relates to spirituality or health and wellness. We talk about mental health awareness. We talk about domestic violence, and we have a good time too. You know what I mean? So that's what we do. And you can follow me on all social media handles at Instagram, Momo Love 1229, on Facebook, Momo Love, as well as on YouTube, Community Voices, where you'll see this full interview and discussion. I'm going to call this a discussion, not an interview, with Mr. Todd Ledbetter, who is, my goodness, community leader, activist, because I saw you doing some things on behalf of a high school in your area. We won't get into that. Husband, father, friend, saxophonist, and just a overall good dude. I appreciate you, Mr. Todd Ledbetter. Are there any final words?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you so much for, I've enjoyed this conversation. Just as a people, we need to do more of this. Just have some real serious, heartfelt, and intelligent conversation. Also, if you want the shirt, it's my son's shirt, No Ignorance, great message. Go to noignorancegear.com, and he's also on all social media.
Say that one more time, no ignorance.
No Ignorance Gear.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
love it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And God bless you and your family.
You too.
Thank you.
All right. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.